Let's see how long it takes them to get on.
Good morning. How are you? All right. Let me do the attendance. I know we're all so perky this morning. It's freezing cold and so I'm curious. We're at the end of the second week. Do you feel like we're at week 10 already?
Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, totally wiped out already. So hi, kitty. Brandon, what's your kitty's name?
This is Oliver. He likes to sleep on comfortable blankets, which I have on right now.
Oh, he's a boy.
Yep.
What a cutie pie. So I had, hi, Aya. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
How are you? How's the weather over there?
It's pretty good. It's
Is it
not that
cold?
cold. No, not that cold.
No, cold. It's freezing cold here. It's horrible. Just in case you don't know, Aya's in Yokohama. So she's like on the other side of the world. So it's totally awesome. My plan was that I was going to continue grading this class and move on to my other classes. Unfortunately, that didn't happen yesterday. And tomorrow I've got a chock full day of meetings. It looks like grading's not going to happen until the weekend. So I do apologize about that, but I will, I'm going to finish your class and then move on to the others. So just know that I'm not completely shirking my responsibilities here. But my responsibilities are being pushed off to the side, unfortunately. Okay, so there's Jody.
You guys should get a lot of credit. Like, you guys are doing a lot of work, even if it's online. Like, you guys do a lot of work. So
No, thank you very much. And I appreciate the fact that you actually recognize that. Working in a remote or an online situation does require a significantly increased workload for not only faculty, but for students as well. And I've tried to make all of my remote classes replicate as closely as I can what we would be doing in class. The big difference is that when we get into the software, if we were in a design lab, I would have the opportunity to go around to, give you guys something to show you how to do something and then have you work on it in class so that when you go out of class, you're able to have a better feel of how to utilize the software and work with it. we don't have an option for multiplexing here where I could see all of your computers. I can only see one at a time, just like you can only see my screen. And that is something I'm not exactly sure how to approach as we get into working with the software. So next week, I was hoping that we could start working with Photoshop to show you how to manipulate certain things. So that's going to be more lecture, and I haven't quite figured out how to do something in class with that. So that's the one piece that I could not get set up for this semester. I did try with Jason in OIT, but with Mike Dente leaving, who was the director or the dean or whatever, I don't know what exactly his title is, but he got another job, and Jason has taken over that position as an interim. So he's doing I'll just say the director's job as well as his own job. And so he's totally out straight, and he really tried, and it just didn't happen. So, you know, we make the best of it, and I will give you as much assistance and knowledge as I can. And I want to reinforce that even though my schedule this semester is a little over the top, I will do my best if anybody wants to meet with me outside. I have a student in advanced digital, and we went through like 4 different times and days this week. And, you know, it was almost impossible between his schedule and my schedule to actually find the time, but we did find something. So, you know, for me, Friday is my day where it's a hurry up and catch up day for me. What I usually prefer is I really like to, you know, just sit down and really get my grading done so I could have Saturday off and then go back to work on Sunday to set up and make sure everything's in order for the upcoming week. I've got 2 department meetings tomorrow, a student meeting. I have to squeeze in the morning, some chores before I do anything. No, yeah. So thank you, Brandon. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
So you get a suck up point today.
If I bring the cat in every day, do I get more suck up points?
Oh, absolutely. Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Animals are always good. So yeah. So Brandon and Oliver are here. Sam, there's Sam. I see Sam's head. Lauren, there's Lauren. I saw Lauren. Sean, I saw Sean somewhere. Where's Sean? There's Sean. Okay, I saw Matt. Lexi's here. Carrie's here. Cass is here. Griffin. Where's Griffin? Griffin. Oh, hi, Griffin. Gabby. Yeah, there's Gabby. There's Gabby's head. Hunter. No Hunter. Okay. Aya's here. Jillian's here. Nathan. There's Nathan. Steven is there. Evan. I see Evan. Sarah's here. Terrence. Up. Hi, Terrence. Holden's here. Anthony's here. Anthony, please turn your camera on. Garrick. Up, there you are. And Keegan. So Keegan, you work for public safety?
All right.
You do? On the Linden campus or the Johnson campus?
Linden campus.
We all feel much safer now. We're golden. We don't have to worry about anything. All right. Let me share my screen. And then the first thing I want to just let you guys know that a couple of things. Can you see my screen? Can you, right? Okay, good.
Yes.
You know, I just screwed it up the other day, right? All right, I just sent everybody an announcement like 15 minutes ago. Here's the information for the Linden Resource Room. I'm just curious, are any of you Johnson students? Okay, great. So then you could just ignore that. So if you can go or are on campus and you want to see if you can sign out a camera, here's the information in announcements. For those of you that aren't familiar where the resource room is, if you go into the front entrance of Harvey, and when you go in, you'll be facing the Quimby Gallery, make a left. And then there's a hallway that makes a right. If you make the left and then the right, the resource room is the first door on the right. And so there are hours posted there. You have to fill this out if you haven't signed anything out. And if you want to sign out anything other than a DSLR camera, then please let me know and I will let Kelly know that. And don't tell Kelly I call her Kelly. It's Professor Glensbrush, or I'll be put in the corner and I'll be in trouble. So, but Professor Glensbrush just gets to be, so it's Kelly. So in any case, all right. So today I am going to go over the homework. So I'm assuming you all saw that I told you that I updated DO3 twice. The reason why, when I was showing it and going through it with one of my Johnson class, I realized I had inadvertently inverted something, so I had to fix it. So I fixed it last night. I have one more thing to do, which is going to happen over the weekend. I need to take some shots of ProShot screen and give you and explain to you how to do this assignment using ProShot. One of my students asked me that question last night, and I realized that I needed to I needed to really make sure that you had that information. So, and the assignment at this point isn't due until the 21st. So you have 10 days to do it. So those of you that have the phone, not getting that information between, I'm hoping to get it done either late tomorrow or sometime in Saturday morning. So in any case, you'll have it by Sunday, I promise you that. So let me open up the discussion. And I've also extended the peer-to-peer critiques because everybody needs to do DO3 before you can critique on DO4. So oh, it's so interesting how this gets messed up every time I move it in, but it's okay. So first off, what the textbook this week is only being used for reference. To accomplish this assignment, if you follow the steps from how to do the exposures, how to name the files, how to put them in the folders, you should get 100 on this assignment. Absolutely. If you follow this, and I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna try to do at least one demonstration. I'm gonna try to squeeze in two, but let me go over the assignment. The objective of this assignment is for you to understand how you change exposures. So we always start at a meter reading. So those of you that have a camera, how you determine a meter reading is there's 3 different ways to do it. You can set your camera on aperture priority, which will allow the camera to set the shutter speed. That is considered the meter reading. The second way is if you're on shutter priority and you set the shutter, the camera will set your f-stop. And that is the meter reading. The third option, which is what we're going to work with the camera, is if you put it on manual, there is a 0 setting that I will show you, and that's the meter reading. What we will be doing is we're going to be taking 5 photographs, and it's of the same thing. So with still life, if I was going to photograph this, or you remember flowers from last week, you're going to take 5 photographs of each of the photographic genres that I have listed. So if I shot this lens cleaner bottle, I would do a meter reading. I would overexpose it 1 stop. I would overexpose it 2 stops. And then I would underexpose it 1 stop and underexpose it 2 stops. So we're going to have 5 exposures of 1 composition. Does that make sense? Shake your heads, yes or no. Tell me who says they don't get it. Griffin, you don't get it. Okay, come on in and let me. Okay, what don't you get?
Wait, so can you just like say it again?
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to shoot this bottle. Okay, so I set it up per the instructions. I take the first shot is at the meter reading. The second shot is 1 stop overexposed. The second shot is 2 stops overexposed. Then we're going to go in the other direction. I'm going to do 1 stop underexposed and 2 stops underexposed. I'm going to show you this. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate that. Okay, you're going to shoot a portrait by the window. You're going to shoot a still life by the window. And then you're going to go outside and do a landscape and some kind of architecture. So those are the 4 basic photographic genres. I mean, they can be broken down to many subcategories, but they're just overarching. So what we want to do is you want to start with an ISO of 400 or any ISO, depending on the lighting situation, that is going to give you a meter reading of 1/25 of a second. Okay, because that's going to be our meter reading. And what that is going to allow us to do is, when this is important for the underexposure, that is going to allow us to go for underexposed a 60th of a second and a 30th. So with a 30th, you can still handhold the camera and not get any shake. So that was why I used 1/25 of a second as a baseline. So if we, and this is going to reinforce the whole idea of stops. You know, we talked about that. If you increase your shutter speed or you reduce your f-stop, you're reducing the light by 2 times for every stop. And if you're overexposing per stop, you're doubling the exposure time by 2. So this gives you a perfect representation in a practical sense of how this actually works. So if we use 1/25 of a second as your meter reading, to underexpose this by 1 stop, you want to increase your shutter speed to 250th of a second, because that will reduce the amount of light by 2. To underexpose it by 2 stops, we want to increase it to 1/500th of a second, because then that is decreasing the light 4 times. So we're reducing it in a quadruple sense. In the other direction, to increase your exposure by 1 stop, you go from 1/25 of a second to 1/60th of a second. So that's increasing it and giving the image twice as much light. And then when we go to 1/30th of a second, we're increasing the light by 4 times. So we're overexposing it 4 times. So this is going to give you, it was interesting yesterday, the meter reading for the flower shot was actually not the right exposure. It actually wasn't a good exposure. So, but here's the assignment, okay? And I'm emphasizing this. What you set up for your portrait, what you set up for the still life, what you shoot for the landscape and the architecture, you want 5 of the exact, or as close as you can get it to the exact same image. One of the issues with this assignment has been, if a student started off with this as their meter reading, their overexposure was this, their underexposure was this. That's not going to give you the same kind of information. And we're also probably in a once we get into Photoshop a little bit more, probably mid-semester, we're going to come back to these photographs and I'm going to show you what you can do with these photographs. So by shooting the same thing in as close to the same position as you started with is actually going to be useful for another assignment. We're going to be working with something called HDR, which is high dynamic range. And when you work with high dynamic range, you need a set of exposures so that you can get really good detail in your highlights as much as you can get really good detail in your shadows. So that's why it's important to follow this. So for the portrait, let's see, look at Jody and look at Sarah. Sarah, move your hand away from your face. Actually, never mind. No, look at Sarah, you're no good today. Look at Jody and look at Lexi, okay? They're both by windows, okay? Now, it's clear that there must be a window on the, well, I guess that would be your right side, Jody, because, well, you have a window here where you see where we're seeing the window is actually dark. You only get like a little highlight around the curve of your skull, but you're lighter on the other side. But Lexi's like really perfect. You see how she's like split right in the middle? She's got light hitting her right side of her face and her left side of her face is in shadow. That's what you want to try to achieve. That's why I say put your subject in front of a window. You also want to have a clean background for both the portrait and the still life. Not all the nonsense that I have behind me. Like Terrence has a great background, okay? And Garrick has a great background, nice and clean, okay? Now, the light's not so great, but that's what you want to look at. Now, Carrie, if you've got the wood planks all over the place, you know, just don't have the picture frame in it. The planks are fine. I have a student who has a log cabin. Is that a log cabin that you're in? Yeah, so that's fine. No worries about it, but just not have any like pictures or like look at Lauren's, you know, really intense clock, which has probably a barometer on it. So she can figure out when it's going to rain or snow, and then they can go under the covers and never get out again because it's so miserably cold out.
It doesn't even work.
It doesn't even work. Great. Terrific. Yeah, it's like, look out the window. Is it sunny? You know, open the door, let the dog out. Oh, it's really cold. I'm coming back inside. Absolutely. Where's the wood stove? For sure. I get it. And we call what we're doing, we're actually you're doing a bracketing assignment. All right. And so what we're going to do is you're going to find what using for the camera, and I'll explain this a little bit with, I think what I'm going to wind up having to do is I'm going to have to record a lecture for the phone, because I need to have the what do you call? I need to have the actual images from the phone to explain to you guys what is actually going on here. And I've got to, I'm working that out in my head at the moment. So you're going to take the 5 exposures. So that's 1. Still life. You want to find 2 to 4 objects, use the plane wall again, arrange them in some kind of a nice setup, and you want to shoot this straight on at eye level. So the still lifes that you did for DO2, you were shooting down and on an angle. I would like everybody to shoot the still life straight on. Okay, it may not be the most creative, but one of the things that I want to emphasize with this assignment is this is a technical assignment. If we get anything compositionally creative from this assignment, that's a bonus. When we're not so much interested in the compositional integrity of what you're shooting, we're interested in the technical integrity of what you're shooting. It's important to get the concept down. This is going to become a tangible representation of how stops work and how it affects what your image is going to look like. So for instance, in Aya, correct me if I'm wrong, but Sumi painting is Japanese, correct? It's not Chinese.
It's Japanese.
It is Japanese. Okay, and it's
Mhm.
very simple, right? It's ink drawings that is very minimal, and it's more representative than it is well, it's more interpretive than representative. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
One of the things that you might wonder, well, why would I want to do like a completely overexposed image? Well, it becomes less representational if you continue to do photography and at some point invest in a reasonably high-end printer that allows you to print on multiple kinds of paper. You could do a very overexposed image that could look like watercolor, or you could print it on rice paper. So there's a creative aspect down the road for this. And in all of in the portrait, you want to pay attention to the shadow, okay? Because we want a light and a dark area. It's important because in each one of the exposures, that light and dark area on the portrait is going to look different. And it's going to have not only a technical difference, but ultimately it will have an aesthetic difference for you, depending on what you want to do with your photography. So one of the things that's very interesting about digital photography is if you shoot on program, aperture, or shutter, you're going to get a perfectly exposed image. And that's great. Most of us want to do that. But what happens if you have a different idea? What if you want something very dark and moody? Okay. What if you want something that looks like the darkness of Terence's image? Okay. If I saw Terence on a New York street at 11 o'clock at night and there was nobody there, I would start walking in a very aggressive manner because I wouldn't trust this guy. Okay, because he's screaming scary in that situation. Okay, and I know that I'm sure you're the sweetest man that ever walked the face of the Linden campus. But, and I'm not picking on you for the hoodie, because I actually have a hoodie today. And look at that, right? I look like a psychotic monk. So I'm using that as an example of how photography could manipulate what the viewer is seeing. Do you want something to feel threatening? Do you want something to feel lighthearted? Or do you just want to be able to show the viewer what you saw at that moment, which is what I do when I shoot my street photography. It's what I saw at the moment, what I thought was all these moving pieces that seemed to make a profound visual statement for what I find attractive. Okay, with architecture. So Carrie, does your log cabin have at the corners the logs coming out, or is it a smooth cornered log cabin?
It's a smooth cornered
Okay,
log cabin.
the other student has the one with the logs, but it's fine.
Right.
When I say architecture, it doesn't necessitate. Jody, are you in a log cabin as well?
Yeah, I sure am.
Do you have the?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so that's great. So I could use that as an example. So if Jody, for her architecture, wants to go outside and she wants to shoot the corners of her log cabin because she has the logs crisscrossing, she could choose a time of day where part of it is in shadow and part of it isn't. And she can do a little, full frame of that. So when we look at architecture, it could be the entire building, it could be a window, it could be the corner of something. Okay, here you could be a little bit creative, but what I would prefer you not to do is, if you're going to do a full building, so like say you have a beautiful church or your town hall is really lovely, okay, go and look at that. Don't try to take the whole church, because you're going to have to lift your camera up and it's going to make the church look like it's falling backwards. So, maybe stand in front of the door and get the door. If it has a nice stained glass window, and you can get inside actually with the light, do the stained glass window. We're working in color here, so that's great. So here, I guess you can be somewhat creative. I guess I'm telling you not to be, but that's kind of dumb. Be creative. In terms of landscape, the thing with landscape is that try to not have a lot of negative space. So let's say if you're at Linden and you're standing between Harvey and the Stonehenge, where they have that ski and ride stuff, that expanse of snow before it hits the road is a lot of negative space. So try to have some objects in the landscape that we can, that it's just not white snow. White snow will work, but it's not the best option. Okay. And I'm going to demonstrate this, and this is going to make way more sense as soon as I start demonstrating it to you. File naming. This is where the file naming is very important. Okay. And it's important for two reasons. By you naming the files correctly and associating the correct file name with the correct with the exposure that it's naming, it's reinforcing what you just did. And the second thing is it makes sure that when I look at this, if there's an exposure that looks like it's really close, I'm able to distinguish it. If this assignment goes the way I'm hoping it's going to go, I should be able to look at this and know that's the meter, that's one stop over, that's two stops under. I should be able to do that. And I guess the third thing is it's reinforcing the idea of stops again. You all have gotten now, this is going to be the third class where I've been going over and over the fact that exposures work in multiples of 2, and all of these shutter speeds that I've put here, these are all full stops. Now, for ProShot users, the ISOs and the shutter speeds are not exactly the same. And that's the reason why I need to do something a little bit more robust that I'm not going to have the time to do in class, but I will do a lecture on that. So everybody who's using the ProShot, and those of you that have a camera and that bought the ProShot, ProShot, will be able to know how to use it. So and I'm going to show you how to set the folders up. But for portrait, oh, and just to let you know, if this is not named correctly, I really want to reinforce, and I know a lot of you are really concerned about grading and grades. So instead of just pontificating about wanting you guys to get the right file naming, if the files are not named correctly, I am going to take 10% off. Okay. So I'm trying to give you an incentive not to lose 10% or 10 points of whatever the grade's going to be. So just be aware of that. And what I will suggest to you is print this out and use it as a checklist, because I did do it in steps, step 1, step 2, step 3. Okay. So for each one of these, so it's DO3 dash PM is portrait meter dash your last name. And you can all shoot on JPEG. And those of you that are using ProShot, you will be using HEIC, and man, I cannot remember what that is. I looked it up yesterday and I still can't remember what it is. And I'll let you know later, because we don't have a lot of time and I really want to make sure that I can do the demonstration for you.
Phil, I have a quick question.
Yes.
How do you want me and Lexi to label these?
Interesting question. Well, Lexi, you're doing portraits, right? Or this one is commercial?
Yeah, I'm doing commercial.
Okay, so, and what are you doing again, Sarah? I'm sorry.
I'm doing portrait.
Okay, so what I would like you guys to do is, I want you to do this, but I want you to do as many exposures over and under from the meter that you can. So if you do quarter stops, or if you do half stops, you don't have to do full stops. I want you to try to get at least as close to 20 images as possible, because then that becomes equitable with the rest of the class. And since it's only going to, so what you can do is, here, let me get a Word document up 1 second, and I can show you how to do this. So you could do DO3-P 1.4. Oh, no, sorry, that was really smart. Okay, hold on a sec. So for the full stops, you can do -1, -2, +1, whatever. But if you're going in and you're going to do the increments, so then what you would do is go DO3 dash P for you. For Lexi, you could go DO3 dash C, and then you could do 1.4. Well, maybe not dash. Well, dash would be minus. Okay, hold on, that would be minus. Or here you could do plus 1.4, because I don't think the slash will work as a file name. And then you can do, you know, your last name, whatever. Okay, so just go through all of your shutter speeds. Okay, and when you get to the half a second, the quarter of a second, you may need to use a tripod. Okay, so does that help? Does that work for you too? Okay, great, thanks. So what you're going to do is, when you have all these files together, all right, and you've named them, so you can see, like here, still life, DO3-SLM, which is still life meter, then DO3 minus S, well, that's dash, sorry, SL+1, SL+2, SL-1. So that will tell you your 1 stop over, your 2 stops under, and it gives you the sequence. And you're going to create a main folder, and in that folder, you're going to make a portrait, a still life, a landscape, and an architecture. Because what would happen is, if we put them in one folder, they're going to get all mixed up. And I don't want them to be mixed up, because we're going to use them again when we do the HDR assignment. So this is what it would look like. And of course, I didn't do it right, so I would be taking 10 points off myself, because I should have put DO3 dash Parisi, but I only did Parisi. And then you're going to upload that DO3 folder with all your images to OneDrive, and that's the link you're going to post to Canvas. Okay. All right, now we're going to get to the really exciting stuff. I'm going to show you what you're going to do. Okay. And just give me 1 second, because I want to save these images. This is from yesterday. All right. Let me just make sure it did it, because I want to delete these. Hold on a second. I only have a few folders on my computer, so, you know, it's not like I have a lot of stuff going on here. So great. Okay, I can delete these now. Great. All right, now we're ready to rock and roll here. Let me plug in my camera. All right. So let me explain a few things. I think I might have mentioned this before, but I'm gonna be a little bit more fine-tuned about this at the moment. The reason why I'm using Capture One instead of Lightroom at this point is Lightroom, when we tether, only allows the photographer to have access to shutter speed, ISO, f-stop, and white balance. So it's only 4 settings. With Capture One, I have access, or photographers have access to everything that you could do with the camera from the computer. So it for demonstration purposes, it's giving me the option to show you more things, okay? So I'm gonna start with portrait. So here's what I want. I'm gonna explain a few things here that are important. Those of you that have cameras, you have something like this on the back of the camera. So what this is telling us is I'm on aperture priority. My shutter speed is 1/640th of a second. I'm on f4 and my ISO is 2500. And this exposure evaluation chart is telling me that I'm almost perfect to the meter reading because 00 is the meter reading, okay? It also gives me metering options here, which is outside of the purview of this particular lecture. It allows, so if I click on this, well, actually I got to do it down here. I have, oh, that's the, sorry. Where is my shutter speed? Shutter speed, shutter speed. Oh, I'm on aperture priority. That's why. On aperture priority, I don't have the access. So you see how shutter speed is grayed out. But with, so here's all my choices. Okay. I'm going to change it to manual. I can also manipulate all my color right from here. I can change what I'm shooting. I always shoot on RAW and JPEG because my camera has 2 slots. Those of you that have 1 slot, you can still do this, but it does become a little bit of a pain in the neck to sort them out, but we can work on that at another point. And so what I'm going to do is I want to show you something. Hold on a minute. So I want to get rid of the grid. So you see how you can see the shadow on the face here? If you're, I want you to try to replicate what's happening with Lexi. And with Lexi, if you look closely enough, you can see very clearly her eye and her cheek on the shadow side. But if it's really dark, so like, look at Evan. Evan is a really good example, okay? Look at how dark his shadow side is, okay? Now that might be just too dark in general. So what you can do is, if you have somebody that might be able to help you, watch what happens when I take a white piece of paper. Look at the cheek. Now, don't worry that you can see the paper. That's fine. You see how it opens it up? You can do it so you can get a little bit of highlight up on the top of the cheek. You could get a highlight down here. You see how that's now opening up the mannequin head's eye? So that's just something that you can manipulate with. But why I ask you to start at aperture priority is because if we go to manual, okay, So my manual setting completely changes the whole kit and caboodle. So you noticed how my shutter speed went down to a 30th of a second, and you see the plus sign is highlighted. That means that this is way overexposed. So what you want to do is, before you start anything, you want to find the sweet spot, which is 1/25th of a second. It doesn't necessarily matter what your f-stop is, and it doesn't matter what your ISO is. Okay, when you're near a window, you shouldn't have to do such a high ISO, but it's, you know, I'm using just an IKEA light bulb, so it's, you know, it's 60 watts or something. It's not like over the top like the sun. So what I need to do now is I need to play with this a little bit. So I need to bring this to 125. Okay, so now you see what happened? It moved it down. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to manipulate. I'm going to have to probably increase my ISO. So I'll go up in one stop increments, and that's not working. So hold on. Let's see. Hold on. Oh, actually, I got to go the other way. So let's go to 1250. Ah, look at that. 1250 is getting me really close. Right now, I'm one stop over. If you those of you with a camera, if you look at this and you have this on the phone as well, and I know I'm not focusing on the phone, but you guys will get a lecture from me, so just be patient. There's a lot of similarities. This is similar, this is similar, that doesn't exist. On the ProShot, A is auto, and that would be the place that you would want to figure out the ISO with the shutter speed. Okay. You do have an EV setting on the phone, and I will explain that as well. Okay, so I gotta reduce my ISO, so we'll go down to 800. Perfect. So here it is. Here is my meter reading. I am at ISO 800. My f-stop is f4, and my shutter speed is 125. That's exactly what I want to be. Now, is this this is an okay shutter aperture f-stop for a portrait. It may not be the best thing for a landscape. If you want to get everything in focus, then stop your lens down to 11 or 16 or 22, and then find that sweet spot, and do it with aperture priority. So once you set your f-stop, then change your ISO until your aperture priority reads 1/25th of a second, and then switch to manual and set that up. So having a piece of paper and making notes is not necessarily something that is a bad thing. So I'm going to take the first shot. Now I am going to go one stop underexposed. So we want to go to 2/50th of a second, because that is one stop. And you notice my EV control, how it went to the one stop. The larger lines are full stops, and in this chart you have a quarter and a half a stop increments. So I'm going to take that shot, and now I'm going to underexpose it by 2 stops. And now we're going to go in the other direction. I'm going to go to 60th of a second, because that's going to give me, you notice, you see how my little red line just went up to the one full stop. And now I'm going to do the 30th of a second, which is another full stop. And you see how it went all the way to the edge, but it's not showing the plus in red. It's showing like right between the 2 lines. So it's really close. I mean, we could be even more precise, but we don't need, this is to give you the concept in a practical application model. I don't know why it takes 2 pictures of each, so hold on one second. I don't want to keep the 2 of them. So, so here's our meter reading. And I know it's not that big. Can I do this? Oh, there we go. That's a little better. All right, hold on a minute. I'm gonna move you guys over a little bit. And okay, here's our meter reading. 800, 1/25th of a second at f4. Okay, and I was using my 30 millimeter lens. We went, is this the 250? Okay, so let me just move these around. Okay, so here's our meter reading. Looks pretty good. Here's one stop underexposed. You see how much more dramatic this looks right now? Now, when we go into Photoshop or we go into Lightroom, we can manipulate this a bit so that we could keep the moodiness of this image and brighten it up. That's pretty bright. It's not so bad. What's happening here is that the window behind there is making this brighter. If you're using a plain wall like either Carrie's wooden wall or Stephen or Terrence's plain white wall, you'll get a little bit of a different feel. And the reason why I'm asking you to do it, if it's possible by a window, is so that you have a really bright light source. Whether you've got a northern window, eastern, southern, or western, you're going to have a much brighter light than the light that I was using. See, if you can look back here, you can see my light shining on it. It's not throwing off a great amount of light. So that's one stop underexposed. Now that's very underexposed, okay? But it gives you, this is what happens when you reduce the light 2 and 4 times from what the camera would assume is the best exposure, okay? Now, if we go in the other direction, we have, now, if you compare this one, no, okay, this one to this one, there is something appealing about this. It's brighter, it's happier. The background's a little washed out. That's okay in a portrait because we're really focusing on the subject. In this case, I don't know. I haven't named her yet. I can't think, a name is not coming to me yet. I'm thinking Myrtle, but I named the car Myrtle, so I'm not sure if I want to name her Myrtle. We like to name things, you know. So when you look at this one and you look at this one, there's nothing wrong with that exposure, but we could selectively tone down the face of the mannequin and still keep that brightness in the background, which is a nice thing. Here, we're totally washed out. I mean, we've lost pretty much everything. And there's really nothing to recommend this. But when we do HDR, what's going to happen is we're going to combine all these images together to make one image. But Griffin, I'm coming back to you. Do you see what I mean about one composition with 5 exposures now? Great. Does everybody get that? Okay, I'm going to do the flowers, so give me 1 second. And if I don't knock my camera over, that would be a good thing. Come on, honey. Let's go over here. All right. Okay, so, all right, hold on a second. All right, why? Oh, I have to go to the live view. Just a second. Another reason why this is really great is because now watch the screen. So you see how I am being able. There we go. I'll pull it back a little bit. So I'm able to compose live as well. And for this one, I'm going to turn on the other light. Which is much brighter. And I'm going to do the same thing I did before, because right now this is overexposed and we can see that. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to aperture priority. So at 800 ISO, to be on the meter, I need to be at a 60th of a second, which isn't going to work because we want a baseline of 125, correct? Okay, I got enough time to do this. So we need to go back here and I need to increase it and see what we get. All right, we're almost there. So let's see. Perfect. 1600, 1/25th of a second works out beautifully. Okay. Now we go back to manual. And I am going to bring this to 125. And now I'm going to start taking my pictures. All right. So that was the meter reading. Now we're going to go and we're going to overexpose it by 1 stop at 1/25th of a second. So watch this thing right here. And now we're going to overexpose it by 2 stops. So there it goes. It's all the way at the edge. Now it's time to go in the other direction, 60th of a second. So now we're 1 stop underexposed. And then we'll do the last one. So Lexi and Sarah, what you want to do is you want to go in whatever increments your shutter speed will work for you to get as much as you can. So, and again, when you start getting down into the quarter to, you're down in this realm down here, you're going to need to, make sure the camera is fairly steady. But I think both of you have tripods, right? So I would just do all of this with your tripod. And when we do the high dynamic range with your work, it'll be a really great example for the rest of the class, because the more exposures you have when you do a high dynamic range, the more intense the actual final image is. Okay, so now let's come over here and let me just come down here for a second. And okay, so I don't know why it does two. I have to check. I don't understand that. That's really confusing me. But anyway, I'm learning the software, so okay, so here is our meter reading. It doesn't look bad. Here is one stop underexposed. My focus, because the problem here is this is actually a good example of focal length. I should, even though I'm at 32 millimeters, I need to be a little further back, because this here and this here, and also by using a wide open f-stop at 4, it's not quite as crisp as I would actually like it, but for demonstration purposes, it's doing the job. And then here is 2 stops underexposed. It's not great. Here, it's really, really bright. I think the flowers look kind of nice, but the background's really washed out. And here it's very washed out. But this is the type of image that I was saying, if you wanted to print this on watercolor paper or on some type of high-end non-photographic paper, something that's very washed out would give you a more painterly look. And in a sense, what that actually accomplishes is, in the late 1800s, late 1880s into the early part of the 20th century, there was a form of photography called pictorialism, and it basically was trying to replicate charcoal drawings, etchings, lithographs in a photographic medium. So what happens there is that the photo is taken, and then in the darkroom it's significantly manipulated. So if you did something like this, it's sort of like connecting back to that period. Not exactly, but by working with a non-photographic medium like watercolor paper or rice paper or something that isn't a photo paper, and there's a lot of that out there, this then becomes something completely different. This could probably look really nice on watercolor paper if we cropped this thing out. Something else, we have 5 minutes, so I'm going to do this quickly. I'm going to go back to our, okay. Look at this exposure evaluation chart right here, okay? We're going to, and I'm showing you this because it's something that will give you a lot of technical information. It's available in all of the cameras, and it's available on ProShot, and it's something that we use in Photoshop and in Lightroom. Okay, so it's a significant technical tool across the board, and they're calling it an exposure evaluation, but it's also in these other programs and in the camera and the phone, it's a histogram. And those of you that visual arts majors and that have worked in Photoshop, you know that the right side of the histogram is looking at everything that is white, and the left side is looking at everything that is black. So what this information is telling us, that this is technically a perfect exposure, because everything is nicely balanced, and you have right in the middle near zero all of your tones, and then they nicely fall off to white, and they nicely fall off to black. Now look what happens. Watch how it changes when I go 2 stops under. Everything goes towards black, and all of the highlights, so we can consider this part highlights, are completely pushed to the left. So that would tell you, if you were out in the field shooting and you had your histogram open, either so that you could see it on the LED or you could see it through the viewfinder and on the phone as well, you can immediately tell before you take a photograph if you're over or underexposed. Now look at it overexposed. Boom. We're like completely off the charts on the highlights. And there's absolutely no middle tones. You have some middle tones here, but the middle tones are completely gone. This is why it's showing you that it's completely overexposed. If we look at, let's go. So now with only 1 stop, we are getting closer to those midtones. Okay, but we're still not getting enough to make this a really good exposure, because everything is still on the +1 side. And then 1 stop underexposed is, again, like I said, this is not necessarily a bad image. You have, it has a lot of possibilities. You could selectively lighten where the light is hitting on the purple flowers, where you got a little highlight on the white. So you can play with that. So, okay, we got 2 minutes. So any questions in the 2 minutes? All right, Gabby, stay for a minute. I want to show you something. All right, guys, keep an eye out for my ProShot lecture. Okay, it will be up by Sunday. And even and those of you that have a camera, you can start, if you want to start working on this. If you have any questions, you want to send me any of the sample work that you're shooting, please don't hesitate to do that, okay? I'd be more than happy to help you out. If you have a question about the file naming or anything, just send me an email. If we need to meet, we'll try to find the time to meet. I'm kind of reconciling myself that I'm going to have to work a lot. So there you go. It's just the way it is. You guys have a nice day and a really great weekend. Okay.
You too.
Bye. All right, Gabby, hold on. I want to, let me get PowerPoint up. You are using PowerPoint, right? Carrie, did you have a question? Okay, I like your sweater. My wife would love that sweater. Is it wool?
Yes, yeah, it's
Yeah.
a Fair Isle LL Bean. It's nice.
Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah, they're not inexpensive, but they last forever.
Yeah. All right, take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye. Okay. Gabby, you are using PowerPoint, right? I am right about that.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So let me just show you, because I understand it's a little confusing. So hold on 1 second. Okay. When you
want
have
to
your,
stop recording?
what? Oh, yeah, 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 thanks. Thanks, duh.